So how much is it going to cost you to sell your home? That's probably one of the main questions on a potential seller's mind when I talk with them for the first time. So I thought I would give you a kind of general overview of what a seller typically pays for in a transaction. Every single real estate transaction is different and much of it is negotiable. So this is just a kind of overview of what a seller will typically pay. The first is property taxes. Any property taxes that are due and not paid up through the day of closing are typically paid for by the seller. Remember, in Indiana, we pay property taxes a year in arrears. So when we get our bill in March or April of any given year, it's for the previous year's property tax bill. And we pay those in installments in May and November. So depending on when you close on the home, you may owe property taxes for the previous year, as well as a proration of taxes from January 1st through the date of closing. You're also going to pay as a seller for some title company charges. This is something that the title companies typically have a list of what is typically a seller's charge and what is typically a buyer's charge. Sellers typically will pay for things like the title search and exam fees. They will pay for attorney fees to review title work. They will pay for the vendor's affidavit to be prepared and the new deed to be prepared. And most of the time, the seller's going to pay for the owner's title policy. There's a second policy that the buyer typically pays for, and then the seller pays for the owner's policy. That's based on the price of your home. The other thing that you're going to pay for as a seller typically are any homeowners association transfer fees. So if you live in an HOA, there may be a transfer fee charged to both the buyer and the seller to make that transfer in their system. Some HOA companies also charge to prepare the closing letter that states if any money is owed to the HOA at closing. The other thing you're going to pay as a seller typically is the broker compensation. So when you sit down with your listing broker and you decide what that listing broker compensation will be, they will also explain to you that they may pay a portion of that amount, that total amount, to a buyer's broker that brings a qualified buyer that closes on your home. Now, there are some things that are negotiable in the initial offer that you may pay for as a seller. One of those being a home warranty. Sometimes the buyer will ask for a home warranty to kind of give them a safety net that first year in the home. A survey of the property that will show the basic dimensions of the lot, the easements, make sure that there's no encroachments on the property that the new buyer needs to be aware of. And sometimes, of course, the buyer may need help with closing costs. So that may be something that they ask for your assistance with. Closing costs are typically a buyer expense because that's costs that are charged to them to obtain financing, but sometimes they only have their down payment and they may need some assistance with that. Lastly, when you have an inspection on the property, if it reveals that some repairs are needed, then that may be negotiated as well. So the seller may pay for some repairs prior to closing on the home. As always, since your specific home sale is going to be different from everyone else's, if you would like some specific information, if you would like to see what those numbers actually look like, I'm more than happy to help. Feel free to reach out, direct message, text, call. Thank you and have a great day.